Hello again, and welcome back to Sustainability AV. This is Dave Robinson, and I'm here to introduce this afternoon's session. We're going to be hearing from Andy Munro, who's going to tell us about sustainability in media production, and he's got some enlightening comparisons, I believe, to tell us about. He'll explain all that as we go along. And after Andy's presentation, we're going to be joined by Nathan Hale, who's come down here from the Premises Studio in Hackney, which I believe has the accolade of being the greenest studio in the UK. Nathan's going to talk about his experience and related to what Andy's been talking about. As before, if you would like to submit a question on what you're hearing, there is the Ask a Question button, which is below Andy's photo on the web page, and a dialogue box will open. You'll be able to submit a question, and we'll be able to discuss it afterwards. So I'll hand you over to Andy, who's not made it into the office because of the weather conditions, but is down somewhere in snowy Tunbridge Wells. But Andy, perhaps you'd like to start.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry I can't be in the studio in person, but as Dave said, the snow got the better of me today and has done for the last 3 days, so I'm getting a bit of cabin fever down here. But it's a good, in a way, ironic way to start talking about sustainability, because one of the whole aspects of sustainability that everyone mentions a lot is the use of technology, basically to reduce travelling and energy costs and everything basically to do with the business of moving around in the course of one's business. Looking at sustainability as a general subject, I looked it up in the dictionary, as most people would do in my circumstances, and it's amazing how many definitions there are to do with sustainable ideas. The idea of maintenance, keeping something going, continuation, support, as in structural support, sustainable structures. You can sustain a broken leg and therefore suffer, or you can undergo in the mood of sustainability. And also sustainable proof in the court of law, and holding up and feeding are all also definitions of sustainability. And it's interesting, really, that all of those things, to a greater or lesser extent, impinge on the ideas of sustainability, which is what I'm going to talk about. So I'll try the slide button, see what happens. Yep. Okay. The idea of sustainability has been around for a long time, but it actually has moved in terms of meaning, and the goalposts have shifted quite a few times in the days since I was a student. In fact, I looked up some of my old textbooks just before preparing this course or this presentation, and it's quite interesting what you come up with. For example, the great and the good at Stanford University and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology predicted with some certainty that by the year 2000, 50% of all world power would be generated by nuclear reactors. That didn't happen, and there are various reasons for that, not least of which was Chernobyl and 5 Mile Island. But in fact, nuclear reactors currently produce 14% of world power, which in this case is mainly electricity, or in the context of what I'll be talking about. The same book also predicted that the world population would double to 6 billion from what it was in 1967, and it actually did. It's actually 6.7 million as we speak. Current estimates, as best as I can find out anyway, are showing that in the European Union, which is fairly nuclear-centric, 34% of all the electricity produced in the European Union is from nuclear power. But the worldwide need for electricity is going to increase by 76%, estimated in the next 20 years. Now, as per the previous statements, that may or may not be the case, but it does show that we are going to need an awful lot more electricity if we carry on the way we are. And the perceived wisdom, basically, is that we should not carry on the way we are, and we should actually start using a lot less of the stuff. And not only that, we should look at everything that has to do with buildings and the way we work and the way we operate in terms of reducing energy consumption, as opposed to just looking at it in terms of cost per square foot or pounds per square metre, as most buildings are costed these days. Moving on now, just looking at world population growth, you can see the degree of uncertainty that exists. These are all current estimates, basically. The red line is carrying on the way we are and breeding like rabbits, basically. The yellow line is a more sort of balanced point of view as to what is almost certainly going to happen as a result of positive action and some kind of policy regarding populations to control sustainability. The green curve is sort of Armageddon time. You don't really want to know what happens when the green curve kicks in, but it isn't very pleasant, I suspect. And this is really the context in which we have to think of sustainability. So looking at how we can do something about all of this, sustainable sources and methods, and again, this is basically in the context of what I know most about, which is studio design, but it applies to buildings in general, and it actually particularly applies to homes and the way we run our lives. So you have to think of these things holistically. I don't think there's a great deal of point in just considering your sort of studio as a ergonomic and ecologically designed space and then go home in a